Hello, everyone. From the home page, I'm going to navigate through modules. Again, the college put together this welcome orientation module for you. And down at the very bottom, at the beginning of the course, you can see this sitemap page, which includes a lot of links, but outlines the various modules all on one page. After a day or two, I will edit the home page and remove this welcome message and replace it with something that looks like this for the week, the current week module. And the beginning of module 1, if you haven't already seen, begins with a very brief introduction, and then goes on to a bunch of notes from me about getting started with the book. And I also have over here on the screen, if you're able to see, the copy of the book open to the introduction. And this is Lieberman's Molecule of More, the main course, the main text for the course. If you don't have the book yet, there are lots of links, including this one coming up very soon, to the entire introduction that you can use for the first couple assignments, lots of other related info, links to other sources of info that you might be able to make comparisons to on the text. And that is an option for those who don't have the book on the first day of class. It's okay, you can get started. If you can read the introduction at the Amazon advertisement page, that's great. These notes are intended to help you get started with the first couple assignments, even if you don't have the book. And I've also included and will include some more quotes from the text that students may use for getting started. The introduction is not only available displayed for reading at Amazon, but the introduction is also available as a free sample of the audiobook at Audible. I have both the paper copy of the book and have a audiobook version as well, something that I do frequently. I've noticed that it seems like more of my students use ebooks than I do, and that's okay too. You are welcome to use whichever version of the Lieberman text you prefer. And I also want to point out there are a lot of notes on this page, maybe a lot more than anyone would want to use. But I like to provide students with options. I encourage you to focus on your interests in the course. Switch this to manual focus. There we go. That still may be too small for many to try to read, but I want to display the text that way. And along with lots of notes and links to a variety of other options, I want to point out that you are going to be asked to choose a couple quotes from the readings that you can relate to your own ideas and your own research for the upcoming essay. That goes not only for this first module, but for the others as well. You will not need to prepare for a comprehensive exam on the content of the text. I encourage you to approach the assignments from your own personal interests and to use my notes as they are helpful. On the other hand, as I've mentioned, there are probably more ideas here than any one person would want to use, and that's okay. If you have questions about the text that I haven't addressed, by all means, send me any questions or concerns about the course in general or the text, and I'll be happy to go into even more detail. But before we even get started, I want to point out this idea here. I may post more notes than you would want to use, and that's okay. You are welcome to use them as they are helpful and to focus on your own interests in the course. So, getting started with the text, this book talks about some aspects of creativity, motivation, happiness that I've been interested in some time, but it looks at things from a little bit different perspective than many of the things I've read and heard in my life. And there will be quite a bit of reference to various chemical neurotransmitters in the brain. And you are welcome to, again, peruse these in as much or as little detail as you find interesting. If you are someone who is interested in technical aspects of things, that's great. You may already know some of the names of the various neurotransmitters and some of the hormones that influence our brains and behavior in different ways. But on the other hand, you are also welcome to consider these ideas from a non-technical perspective as well. So when talking about, for example, the terms mentioned before, motivation, creativity, and happiness, most of the lessons I had as a young person did not involve brain chemistry at all. And that's part of the way the text is set up, to try to bring some understanding from contemporary brain science into the philosophy and psychology and social psychology involved, and also to try to make some connections between previous ways of thinking about such topics. People have been thinking about motivation and happiness and creativity and education and dealing with dependencies for many years, for many decades, for many hundreds of years. And we're only recently starting to look into the brain in these ways through neurotransmitter chemistry. So that is an option for you. Again, you are welcome to look into these ideas in general terms, in as much technical detail as you may be interested in. If you are a natural science major, a physical health major, if you are headed into medicine, you may look at the ideas from a biological perspective. If you are someone who's interested in psychology and sociology, you are welcome to look at things more from that perspective. And you're also welcome to look at things from a non-scientific perspective as well. So starting very generally here with some ideas, the very first topics that Lieberman discusses with up and down is also related to these ideas right here from this quote. not only down, but things nearby, things you can touch, things that you can do something about with very little or seemingly none at all planning, effort, or thought, as opposed to not only up, but also far away and in the future, things that you have to plan, think, and calculate about. And these are, if not the two big differences in the text, this is much of the organizational framework that he's going to be talking about throughout the book. And that is a quote that everyone is welcome to use if you like. That's from the introduction here, page XV, which you can almost see. There you go. Down at the bottom of the page. And generally, what do you think about your own motivation, creativity, and happiness? What about satisfaction and desire? What have you been taught? What have you decided for yourself? What have you heard about but not tried yet on different ways to maximize the good life and to minimize the unpleasant aspects of some of these things? Here are links to a couple different perspectives as well, not only biology and psychology, but some old-fashioned ideas developed out of ancient Greece, developed in Europe in we should say after the Enlightenment, I suppose, even though it may not seem very enlightened. And horoscope is a whole different way of thinking about what some people might call personality types. Very different perspectives. Here are the next two pages of the text. And this page right here, note from the authors, is referred to here. And this quote, science is messy. The note here at the beginning talks about how they have tried to summarize what they believe are some of the most influential studies. But by messy, they are talking about how the scientific community develops theory by multiple researchers around the world over time, replicating or attempting to replicate the results of previous studies to build on ideas. And not all research comes out with crystal clear comparable results. Sometimes different researchers find seemingly conflicting results. Sometimes that's a result of the development of understanding. Sometimes it's the way that different methodologies and different experiments produce slightly different results that are sometimes ultimately compatible, and other times different research is not very well compatible for comparison, partly because of the way it's been designed and partly because of the methodology of the, not only because of the design of the methodology of the design, but also because of the understanding of the theory behind the design of the experiment. And as new ways of thinking lead to new types of experiments, sometimes that results in the revision of theory and the development of new ideas. Sometimes studies that have been accepted in the past are seen in new ways. Sometimes research that didn't seem to produce usable results after reconsideration later are understood in new ways, etc., etc. The point here is, if you are interested, you are by all means welcome to explore the primary sources that are listed in the back of the book, which I will very briefly flip to. The end of each chapter, here's one example, includes a list of further readings. You are welcome to peruse those if you find them interesting. And another thing that I want to point out, I use a variety of texts for this course. I've been doing English 101 for some time, and I like to use a new nonfiction book and compare it to older literature, often a Shakespeare play, not always, but often. And you are asked to read and consider the ideas of the text, but you are not required to agree with either author. You are welcome to not only pick and choose the parts of the text that you find interesting to focus on based on your own ideas, but you are welcome, if you like, to compare the results that are presented in the text to others that you find on your own. And you are welcome to evaluate the ideas of the text on a case-by-case basis. You are not expected to, again, to agree with everything you read, but to consider it. And for example, the idea that is compared with this next quote comes from one from a couple hundred years ago, Mary Wollstonecraft's Vindication of the Rights of Woman, in which she is talking about how men have discounted the abilities of women, even though women have not been encouraged to pursue education in a very short way, is some of what she's talking about in the text there. Some of her ideas apply beyond the realm of male and female in ways that I found interesting. And also some of the ideas that she's talking about, comparing the way that people respond to others and think about themselves and develop both satisfaction with the present and desire for the future in happy and unhappy ways, successful and unsuccessful ways. And those are some of what I found interesting, comparing many of the ideas. I've been looking at both texts this month, and she was analyzing, as I said, some of the social effects on women as a result of education and experience, how people develop into the ways of thinking that we follow, and what we might do about maximizing our strengths and facing our challenges. That's part of what I find interesting with this text, and that's part of the reason why I'm recommending that you consider beginning at the beginning with the introduction that we've been talking about so far, but then perhaps switching to the very last chapter, 7, and checking out what he has to say at the very end of the book, because chapters 1, 2, and some of the other parts of some of the other chapters to follow have some rather what I'll call it bad news, the bad news of dopamine, which has been, I believe, overemphasized in some of the current media, and some of the good news that he focuses on the end about what we might do if we have desires and motivations to reach goals in the future, which I'm intentionally phrasing in a very general form. Okay, and along with that, the last set of notes here, this last section, talks about other different ways to evaluate what's often called personality types. Up above, mentioned horoscope, and you might find some interesting comparisons in the way that different personality types divide up their models. You can see the number 16 here and the number 5 here. And over this list of a variety of tests, it includes inventories related to conditions we would often consider mental illness. And then this very last one, college and career goals. And this website was intentionally designed by the state for high school students, but altogether, these are different ways of looking at who we are, how we get to be who we are, and how we develop to reach goals that we have for ourselves. I have, with this video, intended to talk through these notes in a way similar to the way that we might in class. And it seems that some students like this sort of format. If I were a student, I don't think I would want to sit and listen to the instructor talk on a recorded format in this way, but I have heard from students and other instructors that some students do like it. I think that some people are listening to some of the materials on their phones and not necessarily sitting at a desktop computer. So if some of the more conversational descriptions of those notes was helpful for you, hooray. If you prefer the written notes, that is more my style, but I'm happy to provide, again, options for students. And thank you very much for your patience. I know this is a little bit long and it's not edited to remove the pauses as I was thinking, but that is part of the way that it is. Thank you. Stop.